Nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons are a bit of a taboo topic because, to be honest, if a country were to ever launch them, it's bye-bye Earth, it's kaboom, and we're all gone because the country that launches them, likely launching them at a country that also is going to launch them back. And then you get into this kind of little scruffy scruff, little scruffy scruff. And by the way, that bear's name in the back is called Scruffy. I had him since I was in kindergarten, and I haven't washed him ever since, so he's been there for about 22 years. Really good bear. I love that bear. The one could argue that we are a bit more bearish on nuclear weapons than bullish on nuclear weapons. And the reason, the entire world is more bearish on the concept of proliferation is because the more countries that have nuclear weapons, the more likelihood there is of a country deciding, hey, we can launch this thing. And if we launch this thing, we have supreme power. Now, with nuclear weapons comes the concept of mutually assured destruction, or MAD, which the entire concept basically revolves around the fact that if India has a nuclear weapon and China has a nuclear weapon, then India and China aren't messing with each other because they both got nukes and no one wants to launch them at each other. However, it seems like the world we are going into, the world we are already living in, is filled with leaders in the West and across the world that are a bit more irrational, and that theoretically could launch a weapon simply because they think they can assert their dominance. They want to show that they're the top boss, the top dog, whatever it may be. And you never know how close we are to nuclear war. As a result of that, not only nuclear energy, but nuclear weapons need to be protected to every single country. And a country needs to make sure that it's secure, that the codes are in the right place, that you've got all the data coming in through, because one little thing goes wrong and the world can go kabooey. Palantir was one of the companies, or the only company, selected by the United States NNSA, which we're about to get into right now, to protect the nuclear codes, nuclear weapons, basically a bunch of stuff with nuclear energy. Now, this is a press release from April 5th, 2021. I am revisiting this press release because it's been a while, and I was thinking about it the other day. I was going through a bunch of stuff, and I was like, you know what? This was one of those things that wasn't talked about as much, and for everyone that says it's a nice little fancy consulting firm, it's like these are the types of things that I don't think a defense contracting consulting firm is getting, but rather a true software company is able to get. So let's read through this a little bit. It was a $89.9 million contract for up to 5 years, and then I want to talk about some of the implications of this deal. Palantir has been selected by the National Nuclear Security Administration, NNSA, and if you're in the United States, you probably didn't even know that was a thing, but yes, that is a thing, to provide its Office of Safety, Infrastructure, and Operations with a platform for effective knowledge management and data-driven decision-making in an agreement worth up to $90 million. Palantir will serve as the NNSA's Safety Analytics Forecasting and Evaluation Reporting SAFER project. SAFER will help the NNSA in their mission to manage nuclear security by allowing it to best allocate its human and financial resources to prioritize safety. And this is Palantir's first contract with the NNSA. Interesting. I don't know exactly what manage nuclear safety means, and we're going to try to investigate into that a little bit more into this video. But one could argue that has to deal with nuclear energy, that has to obviously deal with nuclear weapons, that has to deal with anti-proliferation, bunch of different things that Palantir has their fingers in order to protect really the country in the context of nuclear. For SAFER, Palantir will configure a common operating picture or ontology that will integrate data and allow the NNSA to measure the health of safety programs across the organization and provide timely insights into data. The program will give the staff the ability to track, trend, query, analyze, and visualize safety metrics from different sites across the country, because there are various nuclear sites across the entire country when it comes to weapons and when it comes to the actual nuclear energy. Palantir software allows for the integration of data across the enterprise regardless of data type or source system, and its granular security model is uniquely suited for the NNSA to collaborate across its sites securely, meaning a site from Kansas can still collaborate with a site from Los Angeles because of the ingestion model and the integration model that Palantir has around data, while also maintaining granular security models, which simply means that the certain people that have access to the data have access to the data, the certain people that don't. And that's one of the core value propositions of a software that actually protects confidentiality of data. Quote from Akash Jain, president of Palantir's U.S. government business. Our work with the NNSA illustrates Palantir's mission to provide software to the world's most important institutions in support of their most critical work. That's one way to put it. I mean, if you're protecting the nuclear codes, that's pretty damn important. We are excited to expand our work within the U.S. government and provide the NNSA with high-tech solutions to make the best possible use of its resources in support of the nation's nuclear security missions. Now, the actual administration itself, established in Congress in 2002, see, I didn't know this, they are a semi-autonomous agency within the U.S. Department of Energy responsible for enhancing national security through the military application of nuclear science. So it's not just the codes, it's also like how can we protect the United States, hopefully, get energy autonomy and energy independence for the United States using nuclear. NNSA maintains and enhances the safety, security, and effectiveness of the U.S. nuclear weapons stockpile. That deserves a pause. Works to also reduce the global danger of weapons of mass destruction. Provides the U.S. Navy with safe and militarily effective nuclear propulsion. And response to nuclear and radiological emergencies in the United States and abroad. So essentially, does a bunch of stuff for the United States. One of the big things being protects the actual nuclear weapons, right? Maintains the effectiveness, the safety, and the security of the U.S. nuclear stockpile, which is insane. This is the administration that contracted Palantir to build an entire data platform to make sure that they are better and more effective and have data and the insights to actually do the job of protecting nuclear weapons. Like, is that just me or is that just freaking crazy? And then you've got obviously responding to nuclear and radiological emergencies, which is like stuff that happens if there's any spills, things of that nature. Now, there's not that much nuclear energy in the United States, to my understanding. So, they do monitor that stuff, but it's not as widely adopted right now. Definitely not as widely adopted in Germany. And so likely that's not, something that they're focusing on 24/7. Let's hear Palantir's CTO. Originally, he was the CTO. Now he is the just president of USG, U.S. Government Business, and Shyam Sankar, who was the first forward deployed engineer in Palantir in 2006, is now the actual acting Palantir CTO. Let's hear him talk a little bit more about the U.S. government business.
A lot of what we really try to do and kind of the way that we try to enable that is by going to the field, by participating in the Scarlet Dragons, right? Going forward, seeing what's actually going on in Germany and Poland right now. Working a lot, as a multinational, we work globally. About half our business is global government, most of it defense. We work with the Five Eyes really closely. We spend a lot of time in the UK and with our partners in Canada and Australia. And if you really think about it, across all those experiences, our greatest approach to this is, hey, bring commercial software, make it open and non-proprietary, make it so anybody can come and play, and then really work with users to iterate on building things like trust. Enabling them to understand why the software is suggesting something to them. And then getting a few layers down and doing a fair amount of IRAD to say, hey, it's not good enough as a commercial software company. We kind of stop at the point at which we've built something and try to kind of throw it over the wall and say, hey, just use it. You have to invest in things like IL5, IL6, and beyond. You actually have to build that infrastructure. You have to have the 24/7 NOC and SOC that can ultimately, garner trust with the cyber folks. And you have to have really resilient software and capability alongside amazing partners in order to actually then deliver that to the warfighter. And that's kind of how we're seeing our software actually make its way into the fight. But I will say that has taken us, I've been at Palantir for 17 years now. The company's been around for 18 years. So I like to joke that we're allowed to buy cigarettes finally, a couple of years to be able to drink. But, at the end of the day, that's taken us 18 years and a lot of investment to get to. I think the way we see this now is that we have to pay that forward, right? And you have.
So why did I want to show this clip right here? This is Akash Jain. If you haven't read his letter called Let's Create a Data Grid for AI, he published this letter a couple years ago. And the letter was very interesting because the entire concept that Akash Jain was talking about was like a lot of software companies and he has the same kind of ethos as Alex Karp. A lot of software companies just take their software, they give it to the client, and then they're like, all right, you go do whatever you want to do. What he's talking about in that clip is that it's not enough to do that when you're trying to build transformational software. And connecting this back to nuclear codes and doing something that's probably really important, not just storing the data, but actually helping an entire administration understand how to better safely protect the data that is correlated with nuclear weapons. That's something more transformational, right? That's not just plug and play software. That's software that really is saving lives, changing lives, and transforming how an organization operates. In order to do that, you've got to invest the time, you've got to invest the resources, and you've got to be dedicated to want to be able to do that. So the joke he makes at the end, Palantir has been around for 18 years. In a couple of years, they'll be old enough to drink. It speaks to the level of time it takes to be able to get $90 million from the NNSA. They're not throwing that around for fun. I mean, they're giving that to clients that not only from a technical perspective can get the job done, which means you have to actually have the software that is able to do it and can solve the problems that the administration is having. But number two, you've got to be able to securely and confidentially make sure that data is protected. And when he mentions, you've got to invest in things like IL5 and IL6, when he means invest, he literally means invest. Palantir has spent millions of dollars trying. I mean, the basic entry fee to even get these security clearances is like upwards of 1 to 2 million. I was reading in their latest article. You got to actually put money down to even be considered by the DoD, by the government, by all these different agencies to even think of them considering to give you security clearance. My point here is that this is a moat that cannot be understated. This is a moat that's very difficult to generate, and this is a moat that, quite frankly, if you haven't put the time in, you're not going to be able to not only get IL level 6, which is the largest level of security clearance that Palantir has, but also be able to get the deals that become associated with IL 6. And I believe at this time they were still IL 5. They got IL 6 June 2022. They got they got IL 6 June 2022, IL 5 around 2021, and they got this deal in 2021. They might have got it in 2020 as well. But this deal was 2021. Nuclear administration gave them $90 million because of exactly what Akash Shane is talking about, that you have to consult with the organization. You have to make them feel trusted by their cyber folks. You have to build something that's valuable to them enough from a technical side, but also from the business side, meaning the intelligence side. And then they have to be able to trust you to even use it in the first place. It goes to show just a layer deeper into what this means for the trajectory of the business. Now, this is all fun, nice little cool stuff I'm saying. What does this mean for the business? I think it means more government revenue. I think it means more government growth. I mean, I was looking at some of their government deals the other day, and I was just thinking, like, man, I remember they got $90 million from the NNSA, but I haven't looked at that deal in a while, so I wanted to do this video to go deeper into it. And I was like, $90 million to manage the nuclear security codes and make sure there's non-proliferation happening across the world. Like, that's a lot of money, because that's a really big task. And more importantly, the trust that Palantir has been able to secure with an agency like that. Think about what happens in the next 5 years, 2026, which is 2.5 years away, when it's time to re-up that contract. Is it going to be 90 million? No, it's going to be a lot more. And if it's not Palantir, if they're not willing to pay more, which they have an unlimited budget, so Palantir can price gouge a little bit when you're dealing with someone that has an unlimited budget, who are they going to pick? Who's going to be able to build a data platform, a software platform, that can manage the nuclear codes of the United States of America? Who's going to do it? And who's going to have the trust of the government for them to be able to say, hey, we're going to give you $120 million because we trust you more than Palantir. We're going to get rid of this entire platform we built 5 years ago with Palantir, and we're just going to give it to someone else because they're a little bit cheaper. Yeah, when a nuclear weapon goes kaboom, you're not worrying about if it's cheaper or not, right? You're worrying about, like, why didn't we make sure the kaboom didn't happen? And it's like, Alex Corp, when he said, I think a year ago, the threat of nuclear war is the highest it's ever been, he wasn't joking. I mean, he was saying that from a unique geopolitical standpoint. I think we have to take his word very seriously when someone says this stuff, because I don't want to say we got extremely close, but the reports that were coming out of Russia were like, yeah, this is not a joke. Like, the dude's thinking of weapons. And obviously it didn't happen, which thank goodness it didn't happen. But the idea that it can't happen, I think is naive, just at an elementary level to be able to assume that it's not going to happen. So the fact that we are able to secure the nuclear codes, the fact that we had an entire agency that's dedicated to this one thing to make sure the bombs don't go kaboom, gave Palantir those $90 million. And when you hear Akash Shane, the head of the president of USG, kind of talk about this from a more philosophical perspective, you kind of see the business value, which is government deals should not stop. The most important government deals should continue to happen, and hopefully across the world they should continue to happen. And it just doesn't seem like any other platform has invested the time, the resources, or quite frankly has the technology to be able to get these types of deals other than Palantir, which is a pretty big moat. Securing the nuclear stockpile, something I didn't even know they were doing that heavily, that is also an incredibly big moat when you're trying to analyze or invest and think of the company. A lot of people say, yeah, I don't get Palantir, I don't understand them. Just if you don't get anything they do, think of them as one of the world's most important software companies, because Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, they are not securing the nuclear codes. They might have the S3 storage bucket on AWS that's hosting the data for it, but that's just the database. That is actually a commodity. What's not a commodity is the interpretation of all that data, bring that data into a centralized system like an ontology, and then being able to gain insights to make sure things don't go kaboom. That's what Palantir is doing. Thanks so much for listening and watching. Let me know your thoughts on Palantir and the NNSA. I'll see you guys in the next one.